Again, my name is Thea Guerin, and welcome to Why Financial Health Matters, Provider Stories. I'm going to begin this webinar with a few introductory remarks and then introduce our esteemed group of panelists. We're then going to hear from each of the speakers about why financial health matters to them and to their companies and what their companies are doing about it. Then we're going to transition into a large group discussion, leaving plenty of time to hear from you guys, the audience, and what's on your mind. And then we'll wrap up with a few resources and next steps for how you can continue to engage with us around the topic of financial health. So I'd like to begin by pointing out that, as many of you know, last month CFSI hosted our first ever Financial Health Matters Day. And we asked you, the public, to post on your social platforms by tweeting, blogging, and Facebooking about financial health and why it matters to you. And the results of the day exceeded our expectations. More than 100 financial health bloggers posted financial health essays about why financial health matters to them. 943 individuals tweeted more than 2,000 Twitter posts with the hashtag FinHealth Matters. This resulted in nearly 9 million impressions, and CFSI gained 222 new Twitter followers throughout the day. So clearly, that's a lot of activity around financial health. But what does it all mean? Well, we think that it means that financial health matters to you and it matters to your customers. It matters to the individuals you serve through the various work that you do. Then naturally, the next question that you must be asking yourself is, great, financial health matters, but what do we do about it? Well, the good news is that we're going to be spending the next hour or so, the remainder of this webinar, hearing from 4 different speakers representing 4 different companies that have tackled this question in 4 very different ways. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our 4 panelists. We have Aaron Shapiro, Consumer Finance Expert at HelloWallet. We have Creighton Blackwell, Vice President Corporate Affairs at Coastal Federal Credit Union. Jonathan Hartzell, Vice President Digital Business Development, Wells Fargo. And Peter Rubenstein, a Vice President at Solutions for Progress. So I've asked each of the presenters to prepare a few slides that respond to 2 of the questions that I posed just a few minutes ago. Those 2 questions are, why does financial health matter to you and your company? And what has your company done to improve the customers that you serve to improve their financial health? So we're going to hear now from each of the speakers. They prepared a few slides responding to these questions. I do want to remind you to submit your questions along the way. I'll be taking questions and putting them to our speakers as they go through their presentations, and we'll be circling back to your questions again during the discussion portion of the webinar after the presenters go. So I'd now like to turn the presentation over to Aaron to talk to us a little bit about his initiative, his financial health initiative at HelloWallet. Aaron, take it away.
Thanks so much. So let me just give you 30 seconds of context on what HelloWallet is. You can understand our financial wellness initiative. HelloWallet is an app. It's mobile, tablet, and of course online. And our goal with the app is to democratize financial wellness and financial advice. Our distribution channel is actually through employers. So we sell licenses to employers, and then they provide the app to their employees as part of their benefits. And so we're fairly focused on helping workers maximize their employer-sponsored benefits. And our perspective on this is that it's very important to have complete financial wellness in order to make best use of things like 401k plans or health savings accounts. We think that if people are, have a lot of credit card debt or don't have sufficient emergency savings, it's going to be very difficult for them to, for example, put money away for retirement and keep it growing for retirement. So I think by far our most successful financial wellness initiative has been our score. We provide all of our users with a score that has different components to help them get a 360-degree view of their financial health and where they can improve. And I kind of think of it as having 3 basic components. We have current habits, such as spending less than you earn, carrying the right kind of insurance, making sure you have the right kind of health coverage. We also look at prospective liabilities, particularly for retirement, but also looking at whether or not someone is prepared for emergencies. And then we look retrospectively at debts, credit cards, of course, and also other loans. There's a little component for home equity. So on the next slide, I can talk about why this has been effective at telling people about their wellness and driving the right kind of change. What we find is that providing people with a score is a great way to drive engagement with the rest of the stuff in the application. And the reason is that at a minimum, workers have to give us at least some information to see stuff about their finances. Otherwise, we can't give them much. And so that moves people to go beyond just using HelloWallet as an account aggregator, but into actually providing the kind of information we need to give them real feedback. And the more information they provide, the more accurate the score. So people like seeing the score go up. They like to see every component of it. So it lets us give people a reason to add their 401k, to add their IRA, to add other things beyond. A lot of people would just put in their checking and their credit cards otherwise just to keep track of it. And we want to go a step further and try to give people holistic guidance. And finally, it gives people direction and encourages them to use product features. So people can see, our users can see, okay, my total score is 78, and I'm really weak on retirement. That's where I've got the most problems. And if I increase my contribution by such and such an amount, it will increase my retirement score and, of course, eventually increase the person's actual life in retirement. So we found this to be a very effective initiative at measuring financial wellness and conveying to people where they can make improvements. So that's sort of the high-level overview, and I will leave it at that for now and get more into it later on with the questions.
Aaron, let me ask you one follow-up question. I know on the previous slide, I noticed that retirement has by far the most points allocated to it. Why in your score is retirement weighted more heavily than some of the other components?
That's a great question. I'll give you, there's a methodological answer and a practical answer. I do think, we do think that saving for retirement is very important. If you think about somebody's lifetime consumption, an awful lot of time is going to be spent in retirement. And so it's important to be saving for it. People are spending, working for 30, 35 years, whatever it is, and spending maybe almost as much time in retirement in some cases. So I think there's sort of that part of it. And it's also something where people can see pretty dramatic improvements, particularly younger workers, by just contributing a little bit more. Now, the practical reason is that our distribution channel is through employers. And employers, when they think about financial wellness, often think first about retirement. It's a benefit that they offer. They get frustrated when they see their workers aren't taking advantage of the match or aren't contributing at all, and they want to drive those contribution rates up. And that's part of how we can be effective as at getting people to save more for retirement. And so we have a fairly high weight to that as well. But I think it's a very important part of financial health. To be doing that as we've transitioned out of the defined benefit world.
Perfect. Thanks, Aaron. And we'll be hearing more about your program in just a few minutes when we get to the group discussion. Let's continue on to Creighton, our next speaker, representing Coastal Federal Credit Union. Take it away, Creighton.
Yes, good afternoon. As we kind of looked at this financial health initiative, and we kind of looked at it more or less not as an initiative but truly a responsibility, as we really looked at what the numbers are. We looked at the amount of people who really were struggling. We looked at the amount of people who were not able to save, and we said, if we're looking at our day-to-day processes and policies and products, how can we tangibly tell the story that we are positively and directly helping people? It really started with trying to define help. So we really decided to get around this, and if we can move to that next slide. We really wanted to get around this because when we looked at those numbers that said, in partnership with CFSI, with these great numbers that said 57% of the country is struggling financially, we had to turn around and say, well, what about our market? What about our consumers? What about our members? What about our employees? If 57% of the country is struggling, then how can we wrap our arms around our people who are struggling themselves? Because when we looked at this and we rectified the fact that they are our members, they are the people we see daily, we work with daily, It spans all income spectrums within our communities. When we look at people who are making six-figure incomes but still have no ability to save, the behaviors are not there, and you see them struggling, and you see it from all levels. That's really what changed the perspective for us to say we should be doing more, and let's really get into this, because we can tangibly make members' lives better and dreams come true if that's what we're going to focus on. And that's really what brought us into the financial health spectrum a little bit deeper than what we were prior. We can move to that next slide. So really, we've done a couple of different things that we've kind of kicked off with. The first thing, and it links back to knowing who our members and our consumers are. So we wanted to do a financial health checkup. We wanted to go in and find out exactly where they are so that we can have a better look at our products and our service development and see if we are really doing the right things. But before we go out and throw a new process, a new product out there, we should see where they are. So we wanted to do this financial health checkup and did a survey that was very well done and very well received by the members for us to figure that out. And then now since we've completed that part of it, we're actually going to what we call the beta project with CFSI, where we are developing a financial health tracking tool that will use those advanced data and analytics that we found during the survey to calculate a score, very similar to what we've just heard, where we can have that kind of score on members and employees who completed the survey. I think one of the big focuses of this, though, as we're defining financial health and looking at the score of this metric is based off of savings, and it's really based off of the everyday savings. It's, do you have $300 to $400 to be able to pay for that tire that just blew out for you yesterday without having to go into debt or in your credit product or go into your day-to-day spending? It's, do you have those type of savings behaviors? And if we can use this score to directly increase those behaviors, influence those behaviors, then we know that that's going to be something that's going to be much more of a tangible benefit that we can measure and say, yes, we are driving that financial health. Those are a couple of the things, and we'll look forward to checking more about it.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Trey. And I have one follow-up question for you, inspired by a question that we received from our audience about making the case, substantiating and rationalizing to senior management. I noticed when you were talking about your initiative, you kept saying we. I'm curious, though, how did you get folks, above you, senior management and above, folks in the C-suite, to buy into this engagement and to get to that phase of the we understood this, we saw this?
It became, it transferred from them to we when we looked at our own employee base, and that survey showed that our own employee base was struggling. When it's at home, it's more likely and easier to pay closer attention. So when that we is something that now is literal, it is the people sitting right next to us. It's some of the people on this line right now. It's some of the people that we're seeing, and now our members. When we were able to show that, that's what changed a lot of that strategy, and that's what brought a lot of people on board to say, okay, this is something that we have to get around. It's a responsibility now. It's not just an initiative.
Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. And it makes a lot of sense. It resonates. One last clarifying question from the audience. Who did you guys use to create and deliver the member surveys that you mentioned?
That would be our great partners at CFSI.
Perfect. Thanks, Frank. Great. And I promise that was actually an audience question, not one of my own. But to clarify, Coastal is indeed working with us on both phases of the project. So the financial health checkup, that was done with consultants on our end, and the team is continuing to work with us on the financial health beta project. Absolutely. Absolutely. Great. Thanks so much, Creighton. Let's now turn to Jonathan. You're up, Jonathan.
All right, thanks, Thea. We can go ahead and jump right into the first slide there. the question being, why does financial health matter? And for us, it's a pretty simple answer, which is it is part of our core vision and values. Our vision says that at Wells Fargo, we want to satisfy our customers' financial needs and help them succeed financially. This is why we exist. This is why we're here. It's why we come to work every day. We believe that the success of our customers and the success of our communities is the foundation for the success of our company, right? If we don't have healthy communities, if we don't have healthy customers, then we're not going to be here in the long run. So you can see the numbers on the slide kind of demonstrating some of our support for communities, $7.6 billion provided in loans and investments for community development, and some other numbers. And to get to Creighton's point, right, when CFSI says that 57% of Americans are struggling financially, Wells Fargo is a national bank. Those are our customers. If 57% of Americans are, then that number applies to the customers of Wells Fargo, and those are the communities that we serve and that we want to support. So for us, it is the imperative. It is core to the vision and values of Wells Fargo, and so it was immediately important to us. So the next slide talks a little bit about what we've done. We have taken an enterprise approach, right? So how do we look across the enterprise? Wells Fargo is a pretty big place, right? And pull together the resources, the assets, the products, the services to address our customers' financial health holistically, right? So not product by product, not even need by need, right? So you may want to buy a house right now, but let's have that broader discussion about how is your financial health? How can we help you achieve that goal? So one of the things we say, enabling conversations to improve financial stability and opportunity for customers and communities. And we talk about conversations a lot. So whether you're sitting down across from a banker, whether you're on the phone, whether you're in our digital experience, how are we engaging with our customers to have a two-way conversation about their financial health, understand their needs, help them make progress, and stay with them along what can be a long-term journey, right? We don't necessarily change some of these metrics like credit score overnight, so we want to make sure that we have a way to stay engaged with our customer and encourage them along the way. So we've got a couple things here on the slide that I'll talk about. We introduced our 8 rules of thumb for financial health. It's just a simple way to talk to our customers about all the aspects of financial health. For those of you spending time with CFSI's financial health metrics, you'll notice that there's a pretty good parallel in a lot of these about spending less than you earn, paying yourself first, making sure you have that safety net to give you a cushion. Talk about credit, we talk about retirement, we talk about insurance, all these various aspects of the spend, save, borrow. We generally talk about protect, and CFSI talks about planning. For each of these, though, the interesting thing is how do we take education, which this is, and translate that to action? So we're very focused on, within our financial health initiative, how do we get the customers to take action and take financially healthy behaviors and turn those into habits. So for each of these, if you really dig in on our microsite, what we've tried to do is provide education. We've also tried to give the customer an action step. We've tried to break it down for them, and we've tried to make it simple for them, right? So we might say, hey, we think you should be saving 10% of your income for retirement. We know that's unrealistic for a lot of our customers, right? So we then break it down and say, if your company offers a match, can you at least save enough to get that match? And even if you can't do that, can you save something, right? If it's $100, then that's great, right? So we try and break it down for the customer, make it easy, give them something that's attainable, it's actionable, instead of saying, hey, you've got this huge challenge in front of you and you're not going to be able to make it. So we want to make sure that we're being encouraging there. We do have a lot of resources. We've got videos and content. We think we're well positioned to be able to bring those together. So not just the education, but also having the products and the service and the banker there to do these things in tandem and be able to, as I said, help the customer take action. If you need a product, right, we probably have that product to help you rebuild your credit or start saving for that emergency fund or any of those things. So definitely taking an enterprise approach and looking to find ways to engage our customers in this financial health conversation and give them the resources they need to be successful.
Great, thanks, Jonathan. And I think you started to get to this this point in the last few minutes of your answer. But I'm curious to hear a little bit more about why you think that you guys at Wells Fargo are uniquely positioned to address consumers' financial health. You mentioned the size, and I think that is what makes what you're doing, the size of the bank, and that makes what you're doing so compelling, I think. Could you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think scale is important, and there's a lot of different people in the marketplace doing exciting and interesting things. But one of the advantages of being a larger institution like Wells Fargo is that we can bring together bankers, whether that be digital experiences, the products and the services, right? So we don't just, provide the education or even necessarily help you monitor your account, but you can actually, if we say, hey, you should transfer $10 into your savings account, we can facilitate that right here, right? You don't have to leave the site and then go to your bank and do that. Like offering it through the bank certainly kind of brings these things together in one place where the customer can take all the action they need to together. So it's an advantage that we feel like we have, and certainly want to make sure that we're delivering on that promise for our customers.
Perfect. And last but not least, we have Peter from Solutions for Progress.
Hi. So let me take a few seconds to tell you about My Budget Coach, give you a description there. The My Budget Coach online platform facilitates a financial coaching engagement between a trained coach and a client working together either in person or remotely. The platform features a suite of tools and content that can be independently accessed by clients. Tools include an expense and income tracker, budgeting tool, and a goal planning and tracking tool. Coaches are kept abreast of clients' progress through the use of automated alerts. So when a client runs into perhaps trouble with their budgeting, the coach receives an alert. Individual nonprofit agencies or networks of agencies, either at a regional, statewide, or national level, purchase a license to use My Budget Coach. So we built data collection and reporting tools into My Budget Coach because, quite simply, we needed to better understand the impact of the My Budget Coach platform on the consumers using it. We also know that outcome tracking is very important to individual coaches, agencies, and their funders. We worked with Michael Collins and his team at the Center for Financial Security, CFS, to embed the financial coaching, or what they now call the financial capability scale, into My Budget Coach. And the scale is embedded into the intake, exit, and ongoing data collection process. So it's actually embedded into each individual learning module. And that's what you're looking at on that page. And if we can go to the next slide. So we were awarded a Financial Capability Innovation Fund grant from CFSI, thank you. And as part of that, we needed a good way to measure the financial health impact of My Budget Coach. So we wanted to do something that looked beyond credit reports. Credit reports are one of the measurement tools that we use, although they can be problematic because of accuracy issues and lag time. But, of course, we still believe that it's critical to share credit reports with consumers. The other reason we wanted a very standard tool is that we were, as part of our pilot, working with over 40 agencies as service delivery sites. So we needed a very standard measurement tool that could be standardized across all sites with all the coaches and the clients. We were looking for something that was tried and tested, that was proven. And CFS has validated the FCS and shown the correlation between financial health reported in the FCS and information found in credit reports. So why did we look at the financial capability scale? So the design itself is very elegant. It's just 6 questions. And in those 6 questions, it covers a good amount of meaningful data. The compact design also lends itself to a higher frequency at which the survey was offered to clients. And it doesn't get in the way of the coaching process, unlike some considerably larger financial health measurement tools that have dozens or even more metrics, individual metrics that are a part of them. We also wanted something that was, again, a standard, and CFS has done a great job getting the FCS out there. It is currently, according to CFS, used by 600 coaches at over 100 organizations, working with 3,500 financial coaching clients. So that was all very helpful. We found that the FCS was a wonderful tool and just showing us again how clients are doing relative to their last score, and the ability to embed that into each individual learning module or coaching session gave the coaches and the organizations an idea of the progress folks were making, a real point-in-time financial health measurement.
Great, thanks, Peter. I want to go back to just one clarifying question. You mentioned, I think, that you're working with 40 different partners, or at least you've been piloting with those. Who are those institutions that you're piloting this with or launching it with?
Sure. They range from your very standard asset building organization, organizations that perhaps may be offering financial coaching already, organizations that perhaps are offering things like IDAs, housing counseling, who wanted to add financial coaching, and we were working with, and currently are working with organizations that don't offer financial coaching, but yet because of the ease of using the platform and the ability to see how folks are improving, are now offering it.
How about financial institutions specifically?
We are partnering with financial institutions as part of the work we do, although currently financial institutions themselves are not using My Budget Coach. But they do support, they support others to use it.
Perfect, great. Sounds like there might be an opportunity there. So perfect, great. Well, thank you guys so much for that overview. I think that was helpful in giving our audience just a bit of context for the rest of the discussion. So now I'd like to move on to our large group discussion. I want to encourage you guys as the audience to keep the questions coming. I do want to recap, though, what we've heard so far, because I think we have 4 very unique, very interesting organizations here. So first we heard from Aaron at HelloWallet. And HelloWallet offers a consumer-facing financial health score that financial institutions and employers can use to measure and improve their consumers' financial health. We then heard from Creighton at Coastal Credit Union. Coastal Credit Union has launched a 2-phase initiative to assess and improve customers' financial health using both survey and transactional data. After Creighton, we heard from Jonathan at Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo has debuted a comprehensive set of tools and resources to help individuals improve their financial health. And finally, last but not least, we heard from Peter at Solutions for Progress, and that Solutions for Progress offers a turnkey financial coaching solution and a way to measure clients' improvements over time. So I have a few additional questions for the panelists, but again, do please keep your questions coming. So first, I'd like to begin by asking each of our speakers to talk a little bit about the business case behind the various initiatives that they've launched at their organizations. And I want to frame this by saying, to our speakers, that it's clear that financial health matters to you personally. It's clear it matters to your companies. But you guys are not nonprofit organizations. You're businesses who have shareholders to report to and a bottom line to maintain. So I'd like to hear from each of you about how the initiatives that you've described, how they have or how you think they will affect your company's bottom line. And Jonathan, why don't we get started with you?
Sure. Thank you, Thea. So for us, we firmly believe that this is a long-term customer lifetime value play, right? So we believe that if we can help our customers improve their overall financial health, right, and they see us doing that, they feel us doing that, that's Wells Fargo that helped them make that improvement, that they will be lifetime Wells Fargo customers, right? And we're starting to see this. I'll give an example. We're doing financial health consultations on the phone and talking to customers and helping them, find money to save and getting them set up on a plan or improve their credit. And the feedback that we are getting is absolutely unbelievable. Customers are thrilled. They're shocked that a bank would do this and that they would do it for free. And we're seeing customers say, things like, call me back in a month and I'll transfer all my accounts to Wells Fargo, right? These are not sales calls, right? We're not in any way, starting this conversation around sales. We're starting this conversation with how can we help you? Let's get you on track. Let's get you started saving some money. And the customers are so excited that they want to, stay with Wells Fargo and bring their relationship to Wells Fargo. So that's a direct kind of articulation of the business case that we see.
Fantastic, and it's great to see that it's indeed paying off, that it's not necessarily just a hypothesis at this point, but you're seeing early results. Aaron, how about you guys?
So, for us, I guess I'll speak. Our sort of fundamental mission is around financial wellness, but I can say for employers, they see this as important for their bottom line in a couple of different ways. And the reason they buy the product is that they see it as important to their bottom line. The first is that if you're an employer and you're offering retirement benefits and people aren't using them, then you have this fringe benefit that you're trying to use to attract and retain people, and that's not fully appreciated. And so showing people, as our app does, that by getting the full match, you translates to this much additional income in retirement can be a very powerful thing for workers to understand their benefits. The second thing is, and in fact, I mean, we've had employers tell us that they've had workers leave so that they could access their 401k without doing a hardship withdrawal, which is, I mean, a really remarkable thing if you think about it. And I'd say that interest goes across income levels. I mean, we've got employers who have fairly high income workforces and employers who have lower income workforces. So the employers really see this as kind of important for their bottom line and showing people how come their benefits are worthwhile. And the second thing is that financial stress clearly diminishes people's productivity. And I think it's hard to measure, and I won't say that there's some specific number that we could associate with it, but that's something that we hear from employers, and it's why they're excited to offer a financial wellness product to their workers. So I think those are two things on the bottom line there. And as I may not have mentioned, but HelloWallet's a subsidiary of Morningstar, which offers investment advice in a variety of contexts. And across the company, we really see the value of offering holistic guidance, that we're not just focused on sort of one thing, just focused on retirement investments or just focused on which mutual fund you should pick, but giving a holistic frame is a really important thing in terms of delivering any guidance on any one specific financial product. So those would be the ways we see it as important to our bottom line and the people that we partner with, their bottom line.
Yeah, and Aaron, going back to your first point, I've always thought of HelloWallet as being somewhat on the vanguard of employer-employee financial wellness initiatives, but I think that we're increasingly seeing employers understand the value case that you, I think, really nicely articulated, that happy, financially healthy employees make successful, satisfied, long-term employees. So I think we're going to see more of that in the next few years, and again, you guys are one of the leaders in that space, so that's great.
I mean, just to add to that, when we started doing this, there wasn't, people didn't really even totally understand what we were talking about, and now it's kind of an established thing. So it's definitely picked up a lot of momentum, and I expect it to continue. Yeah.
That's great. Great, and how about you guys at Coastal Federal Credit Union? How are you guys either seeing, or how do you hope to see the return on investment in your financial health initiatives? Great, and if you're talking, you may be on mute.
We definitely see that it's going to impact the company's bottom line. And I would say one of the things that we really looked at and faced is the combination of your short-term results versus your long-term results. I mean, so many of the strategies that we look at need to have a short-term ROI, and we looked at it and said, from a behavioral standpoint, how do we combine the two, using the old adage that doing good business in your community is simply good business. Once we really added those things together and we saw, well, wait a minute, and to go to something Jonathan was saying earlier, when we're doing financial education at its highest level, we have the people that we touched and educated coming back to us and asking for more and we're seeing the business grow that way. So being able to combine those short-term results strategies with the long-term was a no-brainer at that point, to be able to say, yes, this is going to increase the bottom line. We're already seeing it just in how we are talking about it and layering out. And it's a direct piece of the fabric of who we are. And we are a not-for-profit financial cooperative. So when we're really pushing that and showing these type of activities, you're seeing that grow, and you're seeing people want to participate more. Thus, they're bringing more of their business, they're bringing more of their accounts, which of course gives us more opportunity to continue to educate even more, and you see that cycle. That's the good business process, and it's working itself out as we speak.
Yeah, and then how about the employer aspect that you mentioned a few minutes ago? How does that fit into this?
Really even more, and let's link that to what Aaron was just saying, because when your employees are having to go through that type of financial stress themselves, how productive are they every day? We see all the linkages between your financial issues and your physical stress, and how able you are to really be that. So now you see even efficiency increases, their productivity at work increases. So now our employees look at this as yet another benefit with all the other things that we have to offer our employees. Now let's look at some of the other no-cost benefits that we're able to do. How can we educate them? It shouldn't be assumed that just because they are within the financial realm of all the places that we're in, that they know these things. So when we're giving them all these same types of things, you're seeing them more engaged, happier, thus more productive. Thus, it's a win-win across the board.
Fantastic. And Peter, how about you guys? I think you guys are in a somewhat similar boat to HelloWallet in that you offer a product that's built around financial health. So feel free to talk about the impact either on your company's bottom line or on the bottom lines of the organizations that use your product.
Sure. It's very fundamental for us in how this impacts our bottom line. The efficacy of our product, of our service, is very closely tied. So if we have a service that we can show has a very successful and profoundly positive impact on consumers' financial health, more organizations will want to license it. It is that simple. But it also helps us in terms of product development, in looking at new ways to expand this particular product and perhaps new products. So one example is in the pilot that we just completed with the folks at CFS, they found that those working in person had the same exact results, outcomes, as those working remotely, completely online. So our thought is, how do you scale financial coaching? How do you reach folks who are not reachable in real practical traditional ways? And using that remote mode and building products around that is a way to do that. So it helps inform our product development as well. For the organizations that use our service, they are in the nonprofit world, so they need to raise funds to both pay for a license, pay for operations, and being able to show the impact that My Budget Coach has on the financial health of their clients is a vital part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we at CFSI talk a lot about is about how financial health is so intimately connected to other aspects of individuals' lives, whether it be their housing situation, their education system, or any other aspect of their lives. And so I see real value in what you're doing for the organizations that you're partnering with, absolutely. And so Peter, you started to mention this customer engagement piece, and I want to come back to that. But I want to keep you speaking now, but I want to move to my next set of discussion questions, which revolve around the challenges that you guys have encountered when setting up these initiatives. Obviously, you're seeing success, you're hopefully going to continue to see success, but that doesn't mean that setting up these initiatives has been without its challenges completely. So I want to talk to you guys about two sets of challenges that I've identified. And the first is the challenge around measurement, and then we'll get to the customer engagement piece. And the challenge around measurement I want to put to both Peter and Aaron, because it's you guys who are really, I think, focusing on the measurement aspect, trying to see what change your products are having on the folks that are using them. So Peter, if you could continue talking a little bit about some of the challenges that you've encountered specifically around this measurement and this impact piece, that'd be great.
Sure. So one challenge that we found when we began investigating different tools, there are a lot of them, and there are a lot that aren't terribly transparent. But the volume of measurement tools out there, the differences may be slight from tool to tool, from metric to metric, but there are just a wide range that are provided by very reputable agencies like CFPB with their financial well-being scale, and folks like the Center for Financial Security with the financial capability scale. But again, a lot of agencies that we work with use a very wide variety of other tools that may have been developed by the agency itself. A funder may have suggested or mandated that they use it. So there's just a lot of murkiness around the wide variety of measurement tools that are out there in the marketplace. Sorting through that with the help of a very reliable provider and thought leader like CFS was a very important part of our growth and understanding how to embed those tools.
Great, and Aaron, you guys have a somewhat different measurement tool. Can you speak a little bit about some of the challenges that you've encountered when trying to measure the success of your tool?
Sure. So, I mean, in terms of measuring success, the biggest problem that we have, and that will be very difficult to solve, is we really can't do a randomized control trial. We don't have any real mechanism for sorting people who would like to use HelloWallet from people who actually get access to it, and then going a step further and being able to measure what happens to those different groups. So when we're trying to measure our effectiveness, the best we can do is kind of pre-post. We can do a lot of testing. We can try different framing. We can try whether or not displaying are you saving enough for retirement, or find out how much to save for retirement, drive more engagement, but we can't really test it against a control population. So we've found some nice results after people start using HelloWallet, but it's a little difficult to make a definitive statement that was entirely due to HelloWallet. It could have been that people were just kind of ready to turn the financial page. So that's one issue. The second issue we have is we never really know if people are linking all of their accounts. We know people might link things that look better for them, that they want to keep an eye on, and we've done user research, and people may have a credit card that they don't really think about as being active. They're paying off. They might not want to link that. So it can be difficult. And in another place where that comes up a lot is in retirement, where things get kind of fragmented as people move from job to job, and they might have accounts all over the place. And getting them to actually go in and link them, we just really never know if people are doing it or not. So those are two challenges with getting kind of the right measurements. And then the third thing is that is going to be true for any initiative is people's financial lives are really complex, and we're trying to draw a map that is a good generalization. But every time we interview people, or not every time, but often they'll come up with things that we didn't think of and can't really accommodate in the application without making it overly complex. So, there will always be people who say, well, I don't have this, but I'm counting on a large inheritance and I have good reason to expect it, or whatever it is, and that's just not the kind of thing we can really accommodate. So, I think that we're, directionally right for most people, but there's a trade-off between covering every possible contingency and providing something that we can get at with relatively few questions and as few data points as possible, so we don't overwhelm our users.
Yeah, great. Thanks for reflecting on those challenges. I know it's often easier to talk about the successes and what your company is doing well, so I appreciate you guys being so candid about some of the challenges. Though moving on, moving a little bit away from the technical attributes, you can have the most perfect measurement system, but if nobody's using it, it doesn't do anybody any good. So I want to get to this customer engagement piece. I want to hear from Creighton and Jonathan about this first, but Peter and Aaron, you're welcome to chime in as well afterwards. And my question is really, how do you get customers engaged? How do you get them using the tools that you're providing? And then I want to add two other questions that we received from the audience onto that, two kind of subparts to that question that you guys are welcome to address in your answers as well. The first question we received from the audience is about how you do this kind of outreach and engagement for non-English speakers or those that aren't familiar with the U.S. banking system. And then the second question is, you can give folks all of the information, all of the knowledge in the world, but if they're not able to turn that into action, it's really no good. So, Creighton, let's start with you. You have a lot of content that you are welcome to respond to there.
Sure. I would just say this. One of the ways, just to tackle the first piece of that, as to how we got some of the customers, the members engaged in it, honestly, it's to how you strategically put together your communication plan. What did you say and how did you say it when you introduced it? How many different types of initiatives and things do we throw at consumers every day, where some of them maybe had looked at some of this and thought this was just it's just a sales technique. So we had to really look very closely and strategically as to how we did that, and some of that communication came with member input from the absolute beginning. We wanted them to be a part of this. It was even easier as you wrap your employees around that, and you have your employees who may be going through some of this, who is working in communications, really influencing how we set this up. Once again, not as an initiative, but as a movement. As we talked about that, and we had conversations with members even before launching into the survey, so that they kind of understood a little bit more. Hey, this is coming. This is what we can be a part of. They were a little more accepting of that, which kind of reflected in some of the rates of return that we got from the survey. It was much better than in some of our marketing things that we put out there. So we were really happy about that, and I think it was simply about the way we approached that. Just to go back to the challenges, and you mentioned earlier, and I'm glad I had this question concerning the internal belief in it. If you don't believe in this holistically, it's hard to get to a point where you will be able to move product, process, to be able to really influence the behavior. When you're saying how, if you have all this great stuff, you can have the billion-dollar bullet of a product, but how do you get that person to move on that? Some of that's going to be in the creativity of how do we tweak this financial education to be able to incent that? Is it a way to be able to incent moving $10 from their excess checking account to a savings account, maybe in some type of direct auto draft, that all of us have the capabilities to be able to do, to be able to teach that habit. I think that this goes back into how we want to shape all of these things that we're talking about, all these different activities, to be able to do that. And that's a challenge, but that's also one of the major opportunities if we're really wanting to make a long-term move on it.
Yeah, great. So it sounds like it's about the framing as well as the pairing action with learning together. Jonathan, how do you guys think about this, the customer engagement piece of the puzzle?
I think one of the important aspects that we talk about a lot is putting it in the customer's path, right? So meet them where they are, right? So they may be coming to banking just to do some transactions or to check some balances or things like that. You know, most folks are not kind of financial nerds like a lot of us on this call who enjoy reading financial education. They probably don't come and read article after article on our My Financial Guide site. So how can we take that, whether it be education or an action step or a call to action, and put it in the customer's path? And so I think, you know, what we did with our credit score product, so our FICO product that we introduced recently, for all of our credit customers, they can now access their credit score for free, as well as we put the education right there in the experience, right? So we didn't just give them the score and then say, hey, if you want to learn more, go over to this other site, right? It's right there in the experience. And then we also put the experience right there on the front page, right? So when you come to check your account, it's there. It's right there. It's one click away, and the customer has the opportunity. And that prominent placement has driven millions of customers to enroll in that experience and check their credit scores and get greater transparency into one of the most important financial health metrics. So this idea of putting it in the customer's path, taking things and kind of breaking them up and just introducing them along the customer journey. The second point I would make is talk to your customers, right? So do some customer research and find out, what's important to them, right? So we talk to customers about saving. We say, when are you most likely to be receptive to a savings message, right? Is it at the end of the month, right? When we found out, well, that's probably not very good because people say they're going to save at the end of the month, but then there's really no money left. Well, it's like, well, where could we put it? Could we put it at the ATM? Could we put it in the digital experience? And one of the things we found through our research is, well, customers are most likely to save when the money comes in, right? So a great time to talk to them is after they get a direct deposit, right? So if you can look for that direct deposit, it can be your trigger, it can be your cue to say, hey, now's a great time to save. And you can introduce a small message, an alert, a notification, a savings prompt that says, it's a great time to save. We see you got some money. Would you like to just make a small transfer, right? Just move $25, $50 into your savings account. And we've seen a lot of success with that. But again, we started with the customer research. So I just encourage people to talk to the customers, do some research first, and ask them the question, right? When would you be willing to have this conversation with us? And then there was a question about, multiple languages, and so we certainly are very aware and cognizant, make sure that we're offering our products and services in dual language, so usually Spanish and English in most cases, although others in some cases, as well as making sure that all our content is accessible, so it can be read with screen readers or anything like that for disabled customers. So certainly important to make sure that it's available for whatever demographics you have in your market.
Great. Peter and Aaron, anything to add around customer engagement, specifically resulting in action or reaching out to non-English speakers?
Sure. This is Peter. So one thing that we've seen in the use of the financial capability scale is, sure, it's a measure of financial health for the consumer, but we've also seen agencies use it as sort of a success measure for coaches. So they can see, are there power coaches out there who are doing real fine work on a consistent basis with their consumers, with the consumers they're working with? Or conversely, are there coaches who are not doing well on a consistent basis? And the standardization of a specific measurement tool really allows them to compare coaches against each other. It also allows funders to compare the success of the agencies they fund when they're using that standard measurement tool as well.
Great. And Aaron, otherwise, yeah, feel free to chime into this one. Otherwise, I've got one last question for you guys.
The only thing I would sort of just add around engagement is, we've had a lot of success with just making micro changes and running lots and lots and lots of tests to see what gets people interested and what doesn't. And we're often wrong. I mean, our hunch about what's going to work better is often incorrect. And so that kind of testing and kind of tinkering has been a very effective way of increasing click-through rates on particular tools, so that we can see, okay, we changed this message and we've increased engagement among our end users. So that's the only thing I would add there.
Great. So I'm actually going to skip my last question, which talks a little bit about the successes of the initiative. I would say for the folks on the phone listening, if you want to learn about some of the successes of the initiative, please do download the case studies that we wrote about these 4 companies. I want to end on one final question that we've received from our audience, which I think is a fantastic question, and that's, what would you say are the 2 to 3 steps that you guys would recommend organizations, employees, institutions take to set up a financial health initiative at their organizations? don't all volunteer at once, but I'm not going to call on you guys. So whoever wants to go first, please chime in.
So this is Jonathan. I'll go first, and I'll kind of continue where I ended my last comments, which is start with the customer, right? So start with the customers. Take the time to talk to your customers, and whether that means you do research or you literally just sit down with a bunch of customers and talk to them about their needs. CFSI is certainly rolling out their metrics, so I'll put a pitch in there around, whether you use their survey or another survey, find out where your customers are and how healthy they are now, right? So I think measurement is important to have that baseline, because when you have the data and you have the facts, you can go to your leadership teams and say, this is the situation, and you can start to build that case for action and why it's important to provide kind of holistic financial health solutions to your customers. But I think that the key is starting with the customer and starting with the data.
Yeah, I'll add on to that about the data. That was one of the things that we thought would be an issue. So when it comes to the data and it comes to the process, find the right partner, find the expert. All of us want to help. How to help is the big question. We were not able to get to some of the steps that we have without finding an expert partner with CFSI. Without that counsel, without that research, without that network that really helped formulate the plan, which goes to the number 2 part of this, which is make it part of your strategic plan. Introduce it as part of an overarching strategic plan for the organization. Without that expert partner, we wouldn't have been able to take it to that level, and we wouldn't have been able to have some of the successes we've had.
I would say, this is Peter, I would say don't reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of great tools out there, a lot of great measures that have been used in other initiatives. Go ahead, do your research on existing tools that are already available. That allows you to be comparable to others who are using those, and that transparency can help you in any number of ways. But going out, inventing your own, or cobbling together, always, I would say, use what's already available.
This is Aaron. I'd certainly echo that, and I'd also say it's important to keep in mind the aspects of financial health that you want to emphasize the most. I mean, you won't find a lot of kind of disagreement about what the key things are that differentiate people who are financially healthy, financially well, from people who are struggling. But sort of what areas you want to emphasize and what areas you're looking for results in could be a very important thing as well. It took us a while to figure out really what our key performance indicators were, and then once we kind of zeroed in on that helped us figure out how we wanted, what we wanted to emphasize and what we wanted to put our resources into.
Great. Well, with that then, I would like to conclude our discussion, to give our panelists a very warm thank you for participating in today's fairly riveting discussion, I'd say. To learn more about what each of these companies are doing, please download the case studies on the left-hand side of the screen about HelloWallet, Wells Fargo, and Solutions for Progress, and then to see what Coastal is up to with their participation in the Financial Health Beta Project. We also have an overview of that project and their specific initiative. We will be sending these slides around to anybody who registered, so feel free to draw upon them for some rich content. And then the last thing I'll say is that I realized that we didn't get to a number of the questions that you guys as the audience submitted, and so I know there were a couple of requests to follow up with our panelists directly, and so I'll be connecting offline with our panelists to see if they'd be willing to continue these conversations offline with all of you. Finally, to learn more about how other companies are addressing Americans' financial health, please join us on September 20th at 12 p.m. Central for a webinar about FinTech trends. Thank you guys so much, both to the panelists for your participation, as well as to the audience for all of your questions, your attention, and your participation as well. Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.